The envelope in my hand felt heavy, its cream-colored paper smooth and costly, the kind that promised something extraordinary. My name, Emma Carter, was scrawled across it in Sophie's familiar handwriting, those looping letters pulling me back to our college days in Seattle, sneaking notes in the back of lecture halls. I stood on the porch of what was supposed to be my home, a house on Elm Street in Portland, Oregon, with a blue door and a garden I'd dreamed of for years. 8 years of teaching English in Seattle, Chicago, and Denver, saving every penny for this moment, for this place. Herbs and flowers, I'd told Sophie during endless video calls, showing her listings, asking her thoughts on neighborhoods. She'd nod, her enthusiasm bright, her blonde hair catching the screen's glow. The real estate agent, Olivia Reed, stood beside me, her smile polite but distant. "Miss Carter, you might want to take a moment," she said, her eyes not quite meeting mine. My fingers brushed the envelope's edge, hesitant. Sophie Bennett, my best friend for 15 years, had sent this. I tore it open, the thick paper resisting slightly. Inside, a single sheet, perfectly folded, waited. My hands trembled as I unfolded it, the words blurring for a moment before they sharpened into focus. "Emma, I know this will shock you. I bought the house on Elm Street, the one you loved. It wasn't planned when I visited last month. I fell in love with it, just like you did. When your financing hit a snag, I couldn't let someone else take it. I hope you'll understand someday. This way, it stays in our family. We'll laugh about it eventually, I promise. The keys with Olivia. The guest room is yours anytime, love. Always, Sophie." The letter crumpled in my fist, my throat tightening like a vice. I looked up, past the tree-lined street, and there she was. Sophie, standing on the porch of my house, waving like she was welcoming me home. Her blonde hair caught the afternoon sunlight, her smile bright, hopeful, oblivious. I forced my hand to lift, waving back, but it felt wrong, like it belonged to someone else. My chest ached, a mix of anger and disbelief swirling inside. "Do you want to come inside?" Olivia asked, jingling the keys. Ms. Bennett had the utilities turned on. "No," I said, my voice hollow, echoing in my ears. "I need a moment." She handed me the keys, her eyes soft with sympathy. "Take all the time you need." I nodded, words stuck somewhere deep, and turned to my rental car. Sophie's gaze followed me, maybe expecting me to cross the street, to hug her, to say I was fine. I wasn't. My hand gripped the door handle, my knuckles white, as I glanced back. She was still there, waving again, her smile faltering just a little. I slid into the driver's seat, the door slamming shut with a thud that matched the pounding in my chest. The engine hummed to life, and I pulled away, the house shrinking in the rearview mirror. My dream, my blue door, my garden all gone. Sophie's letter lay crumpled on the passenger seat, her words burning in my mind. "It stays in our family." What family? The one where she stole my future? I drove toward my temporary apartment, the streets of Portland blurring past, my heart racing with questions I wasn't ready to answer. Not yet. Back in my rental apartment, the door clicked shut behind me. I slid down to the floor, my back against the wood, and let the tears come. They weren't just for the house on Elm Street, though that loss cut deep. It was for Sophie, my best friend, whose betrayal had shattered something I thought was unbreakable. 8 years of teaching English to executives and their kids in Seattle, Chicago, and Denver flashed through my mind. Tiny apartments, skipped vacations, sending money home for funerals and weddings I couldn't afford to attend. All for that house. My house. The crumpled letter from Sophie lay in my lap, its words like a knife. "It stays in our family." My family didn't steal dreams. My phone buzzed on the floor, Sophie's name lighting up the screen. "Are you okay? Come over when you're ready. We need to talk." Another buzz. "Emma, please, it's not what you think." I stared at the messages, my thumb hovering over the power button. With a flick, the screen went black, silencing her. I couldn't hear her excuses, not now. The room felt too small, the air too thick. I pulled myself up, my legs shaky, and stumbled to the window. Rain tapped against the glass, a soft, uneven rhythm that matched my heartbeat. Anger surged, hot and sharp, replacing the ache. Sophie knew everything, every sacrifice, every late-night call about that blue door, that garden. She knew, and she took it anyway. I grabbed my laptop from the table, the screen glowing to life. My fingers moved before I could think, searching for answers. Property records, ownership laws, anything about the sale on Elm Street. Sophie's name was there, bold and final on the deed. My dream, signed away. The anger burned brighter, and I opened a new document, typing the title with steady hands, taking back my house. The words stared back at me, a promise, a plan. I didn't know how yet, but I'd find a way. Sophie thought she could decide my future, but she was wrong. I leaned back, the rain louder now, and let the thought settle. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The morning light filtered through my apartment's blinds, casting thin shadows across the laptop screen. I hadn't slept, my mind racing with the document titled, Taking Back My House. Sophie's betrayal looped in my head, but I wasn't just angry anymore. I was determined. My first move was to dig deeper, and that meant Ava Thompson, the interior designer Sophie bragged about hiring for the Elm Street house. If anyone knew details about the sale, it was her. I found Ava's contact on her sleek website, her portfolio boasting transformations for Portland's elite. My fingers hovered over the phone, heart pounding. This wasn't messaging, pretending, but Sophie had left me no choice. I dialed, my voice steady despite the nerves. Hi, Ava. This is Emma Carter, a close friend of Sophie Bennett's. She suggested I reach out about the Elm Street property. A pause, then Ava's voice, warm but curious. Oh, that's a surprise. Sophie didn't mention a consultant. I forced a light laugh. That's Sophie for you, always forgetting the details. We've been planning this house forever. I just got back from a teaching gig in Denver. The lie felt sour, but it worked. Ava's tone softened. We're in the early stages, she said. Could we meet to discuss your ideas? I'm free tomorrow at 2, my office in the Pearl District. Perfect, I said, scribbling the appointment in my planner. See you then. Hanging up, I exhaled, my hands trembling. Step 1 done. But I needed backup, someone who'd understand. I texted Lily Harper, my rock since college, the one who'd seen me through every crisis. Coffee? Need to talk. Her reply was instant. Corner brew, 3:30. The cafe in downtown Portland was packed, the afternoon rush, buzzing with chatter and clinking cups. Lily had snagged our usual corner table, her tall frame relaxed as she stood to hug me. You look like hell, she said, her eyes kind but worried. Thanks, I muttered, sliding into the seat. She pushed a cup toward Maros chai tea, my usual. The familiar scent wrapped around me, grounding me for a moment. Spill, she said after I took a sip. What's going on? I told her everything, the letter, Sophie's betrayal, the house on Elm Street. My voice cracked as I described the blue door, the garden I'd never have. Lily listened, her face darkening with every word. She bought your house, she whispered, leaning forward. Emma, that's unforgivable. I'm not letting it go, I said, pulling out my notebook. I'm meeting Ava Thompson tomorrow, pretending to be Sophie's consultant. I need to know why she did this. Lily's eyes widened. That's bold. Risky, but bold. She flipped through my notes, her brow furrowing. You're digging into property laws, zoning? Emma, this is serious. I have to be, I said, my voice low. Sophie knew every sacrifice I made for that house. 8 years, Lily. I can't just walk away. She sighed, closing the notebook. I'm with you, but be careful. This kind of plan, it changes you. She paused, then squeezed my hand. What do you need from me? Help me research, I said. Anything on Ava, the sale, Sophie's finances. I need leverage. Lily nodded, her expression torn but resolute. Okay, I'll dig into Ava's background, see what I can find. But promise me you'll stay you, Emma. Don't let this make you someone you're not. I forced a smile, but her words stung. The old Emma, trusting and forgiving, felt far away. As we left the cafe, the Portland rain started again, soft and steady. I gripped my notebook, the plan taking shape. Sophie thought she'd won, but I was just getting started. The hum of the corner brew cafe wrapped around me, the scent of rose chai tea fading as tension coiled in my chest. Lily sat across from me, her eyes scanning my notebook, worry etched into her face. I was about to say more when the door swung open, and there she was. Sophie Bennett, weaving through the crowded tables, her cream jacket catching the light. Her blonde hair was tied back, her smile bright, familiar, like I was still the most important person in her world. Emma, she called, her voice cutting through the chatter. Thank God, I've been trying to reach you for days. Lily tensed beside me, her hand tightening on her coffee cup. I forced my face to stay calm, though anger simmered just beneath. I've been busy, I said evenly, my voice betraying nothing. Sophie's smile faltered. We need to talk, she said, pulling a folded paper from her purse and setting it on the table. The edges were worn, a coffee stain darkening one corner. This is what I've been trying to tell you. I stared at the document, my name printed at the top. What is this? The inspection report, she said, her voice softening. From 3 weeks ago. The foundation's cracked, Emma. Repairs could cost $80,000. My breath caught, the number hitting like a punch. 80,000. I repeated, what inspection report? She leaned closer, her eyes earnest. The one your inspector submitted. I saw it when you were in Denver, and I couldn't let you sink your savings into a money pit. I pushed the paper back, my voice sharp. You bought my house to protect me? Sophie, you knew how much this meant to me. I tried to tell you, she said, her hands gesturing helplessly. I called when you were in Denver, but the connection was awful, and you were so excited about closing. I made a split-second decision. Lily's gaze flicked to me, silently urging me to stay calm. But the air felt too thick, the cafe too small. You didn't tell me, I said, my voice low, hollow. You went behind my back. Sophie's face flashed with something relief, maybe, at finally getting it out. I couldn't let you make that mistake, Emma. The house isn't worth it. I stood, grabbing my notebook, the report still on the table. You don't get to decide that, I said, my words cutting through the noise. You knew everything, every sacrifice, every dream, and you took it anyway. Emma, please, she reached for my arm, but I stepped back. We can fix this. The house could still be yours. Maybe we co-own it until the repairs. I need to verify this. I cut her off, my heart racing. I need to talk to my agent. Sophie nodded eagerly. Of course. We'll work through it together. I didn't respond, turning to Lily. Can you drive me home? She was up in a second, her hand on my shoulder. Let's go, she said, her voice steady. Sophie's voice followed us. Emma, don't shut me out. Not again. The words stung, pulling at memories of last year, when I'd vanished into grief after my mom's death, ignoring Sophie's calls for months. But this was different. I didn't look back as we left, the Portland rain greeting us outside, cold and relentless. In Lily's car, I clutched the inspection report, its weight heavier than the paper itself. Sophie's story didn't add up. She'd known about the foundation for weeks, maybe longer. I needed answers, and I wasn't stopping until I had them. The rain-slick streets of Portland glistened under the streetlights as I clutched the inspection report, its edges creasing in my grip. Sophie's words from the cafe echoed in my head, her claim of protecting me feeling more like a lie with every passing minute. I needed the truth, and that meant confronting Olivia Reed, the real estate agent who'd handed me Sophie's letter on Elm Street. Her office, tucked in a polished building downtown, screamed trust and competence, but I wasn't buying it anymore. Olivia greeted me with a practiced smile, her manicured nails gleaming under the fluorescent lights. "Emma, what a lovely surprise," she said, her tone too smooth, her eyes too guarded. "Not a surprise," I said, placing the inspection report on her desk, its coffee-stained corner stark against the polished wood. I called for an appointment. "Can you explain why I never saw this?" "It says the house I was buying needs $80,000 in foundation repairs." Her smile didn't waver, but a flicker of unease crossed her face. "I sent that report to you 3 weeks ago," she said, turning to her computer. "Email and certified mail. Let's check." Her fingers tapped the keyboard, then she spun the screen toward me. "Here, sent on the 15th, and the letter was delivered to your apartment on the 17th. I leaned in, my pulse quickening. "That's my personal email," I said, my voice sharp. "We've used my work email for everything." "You sent it to the wrong address." Olivia's composure cracked, just for a moment. "I'm so sorry," she said, her voice still polished. "I must have used the address from your initial inquiry. You never followed up, so I assumed you were handling the repairs yourself." I laughed, bitter and short. "Handling repairs? With what? An extra $80,000 lying around." I leaned forward, my hands pressing into the desk. "Did Sophie Bennett see this report?" Her hesitation was answer enough. She shifted in her chair, her smile gone. "Ms. Bennett is a longtime client. When she expressed interest in the property, I may have mentioned the inspection findings. In general terms, of course." "In general terms," I repeated, my voice low, cold. "And then she made an offer, knowing I had financial delays." Olivia opened her mouth, but I cut her off. "You shouldn't have shared my report." I stood, gathering the papers. "I'll file a complaint with the Real Estate Commission," I said, my words steady despite the anger boiling inside. "Expect to hear from them." I left her office, the door closing with a soft click behind me. In my car, I gripped the steering wheel, the Portland skyline blurring through the rain-streaked windshield. Olivia's mistake had cost me my dream, and Sophie had used it to her advantage, sneaking behind my back to claim what was mine. My phone buzzed Lily, asking for updates, but I couldn't answer yet. I started the car and drove toward Elm Street, the house pulling me like a magnet. As I turned the corner, the blue door came into view, mocking me under the gray sky. I parked across the street, staring at it, a new idea forming. This wasn't over. Not yet. The Pearl District in Portland buzzed with morning energy, artists and hipsters weaving through renovated warehouses turned boutiques. My hands shook as I parked outside Ava Thompson's design firm, a chic Victorian house with large windows that screamed sophistication. Inside, I'd confront the woman Sophie had hired to transform my house on Elm Street. My plan felt reckless, but after Olivia's betrayal and Sophie's lies, I had no choice. I checked my watch 15 minutes until our 2 o'clock meeting. This was it. I'd spent the night digging into Ava's past, thanks to Lily's research. A lawsuit 3 years ago, a client named Darren accusing her of taking bribes from contractors, inflating bids, pocketing the difference. The case was dismissed. Darren dropped it, but the whispers lingered. Leverage. That's what I needed. I stepped out of the car, the Portland air cool against my skin, and walked to the door. The bell chimed as I entered, the showroom a blend of modern elegance and vintage charm. Ava looked up from her desk, her auburn hair pulled into a neat bun. "Emma," she said, her tone cautious, neutral. "I wasn't expecting you." "I hope we can talk," I said, glancing at a client browsing fabric samples nearby. "Privately." Ava hesitated, then nodded. "Give us a minute," she told the client, gesturing toward a coffee station in the back. Once alone, she pointed to a chair. "What's this about?" I held her gaze, my heart pounding. "The Elm Street property, indirectly." Her expression stiffened, but I pressed on. 3 years ago, you were sued by a client, Darren. He claimed you inflated contractor bids, took kickbacks." Her face paled, just slightly. That case was dismissed, she said, her voice low. Darren couldn't prove anything. I leaned forward, my voice steady despite the adrenaline. I have an email between Darren and Premier Construction discussing your consulting fees. The licensing board would find it compelling. Ava stood abruptly, moving to the front window to pull the curtains shut. When she turned back, her composure was back, but her eyes were sharp. "Where did you get that?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Does it matter?" I said, keeping my tone even. "It's enough to make the board ask questions." She studied me, her fingers tightening around the edge of her desk. "What do you want, Emma?" The question hung between us, heavy. What did I want? Revenge? The house? Something else entirely? "I want you to drop Sophie Bennett as a client," I said finally. "And I want to know why she really bought that house. I don't believe it was to protect me from a bad investment." Ava sank back into her chair, her shoulders slumping. "How long have you two been friends?" 15 years, I said, the number feeling like a wound. "And you're willing to threaten me, risk my career, to get back at her?" She tilted her head, framing it like a challenge. "It's not petty," I said, my voice firm. "It's about understanding what happened. Making sure it never happens again." Ava exhaled, her gaze distant. "Sophie came to me 6 months ago before you even found the Elm Street listing. She knew about the house before it hit the market. She'd been planning to buy it for a while." My stomach dropped. 6 months? I whispered. "That's impossible. I only found it 3 months ago." "She knew," Ava said, her voice soft but certain. "It had nothing to do with the foundation." The room tilted, the air too thick to breathe. 6 months. Before the inspection report, before my financing snag. Sophie had lied from the start. "Why?" I asked, my voice breaking. "You'll have to ask her," Ava said, reaching for her phone. "Are you reporting me, or can we agree this never happened?" I stood, my legs unsteady, and moved to the door. "I need to think," I said, pausing as Ava called after me. "For what it's worth," she said, "you're asking the right questions. Just not in the right way." Outside, I leaned against my car, the Portland drizzle wetting my hair. My phone buzzed a message from an unknown number. "Meet me at Riverside Park, North Entrance, 3 p.m. We need to talk about Sophie." My heart raced. Someone else knew. The plan I'd started was spiraling, pulling me somewhere I wasn't sure I wanted to go. Riverside Park hummed with life, joggers weaving past parents, pushing strollers under the gray Portland sky. I scanned the north entrance, my heart thudding from Ava's revelation. Sophie had planned to buy the Elm Street house 6 months ago, long before I'd even seen it. The message from an unknown number burned in my mind. "Meet here, 3 o'clock, to talk about Sophie." I spotted Chloe, Lily's hacker friend, on a bench by the water, her dark hair falling over her face as she typed on a laptop. Her tall, lean frame was hunched, tense, like she was guarding something big. "Chloe," I said, sitting beside her. "This is about Sophie, right?" She glanced around, her eyes darting nervously, then nodded. "I found something you need to see." She turned the laptop toward me, the screen glowing with a series of emails. "I restored the conversations you asked for, but there's more. Something off." I leaned in, my breath catching as I skimmed the first email, dated 8 months ago, between Sophie and someone named David Larson. My confusion deepened with every line. "Who's David?" I asked. "Real estate developer," Chloe said, pointing to a line. "Specializes in historic renovations, but not the kind that saves houses. Look, Theory talking about Elm Street 8 months ago." My stomach twisted. 8 months. Before the house was listed, before I'd shared my dream with Sophie. The email read, "Sophie, the Elm Street property is key. Secure it, and we've got 80% of the block for the development." Another, dated 2 weeks ago, made my hands go cold. "The foundation issues a lucky break, gives us a legitimate reason to demolish. Congrats on your foresight." This'll be the deal of the decade. I read it again, my voice barely a whisper. She's planning to tear it down? For a development project? Chloe nodded, her face grim. Mixed-use complex retail below, luxury apartments above. The whole historic neighborhood, gone. She opened an attachment, architectural plans flashing across the screen, my house reduced to a footnote in a glossy blueprint. Projected profits, 300% for investors. I leaned back, the park spinning around me. She lied, I said, my voice hollow. About everything. There's more, Chloe said, hesitating. I checked her email settings. There's a forwarding rule on your personal account. Every email you sent or received for the past year, house plans, finances, everything went to an address I traced back to Sophie. The world tilted, the air too heavy to breathe. She's been spying on me? I whispered. For a year. Chloe closed her laptop, her voice soft. I don't know why, Emma. Money, maybe? Control. I wanted to meet in person because she's still active, still watching. I stood, needing to move, to think. My dream, my sacrifices, all laid bare for Sophie to manipulate. Why would she do this? I asked, not expecting an answer. Chloe's eyes met mine, steady but sad. The plans mention other investors. She paused, her voice dropping. Lily's name is on the list. The words hit like a slap, my knees nearly buckling. Lily, my rock, my confidant through every crisis, was part of this? I gripped the bench, the wood rough under my palms. Lily? I repeated, my voice breaking. I'm sorry, Chloe said, standing. I'll keep digging if you want, but be careful, Emma. I nodded, barely hearing her as she walked away. The park's noise faded, leaving only the thud of my heart. Sophie's betrayal was one thing, but Lily? The two people I trusted most, plotting behind my back. I pulled out my phone, my fingers trembling. I needed answers, and I needed them now. Night had fallen over Portland, the city lights smudging against the rain-soaked windows of my car. I parked outside Lily Harper's apartment building, the warm glow from her third-floor window taunting me. Chloe's words echoed in my head. Lily, my rock, was an investor in Sophie's development scheme to demolish Elm Street. My hands trembled as I gripped the steering wheel, betrayal cutting deeper than I thought possible. My phone buzzed, Lily's name on the screen. I know you're outside. Come up. Of course, she knew. She always did. The elevator ride felt endless, each step down the hallway heavy, deliberate. I knocked, and the door opened instantly. Lily stood there, her tall frame tense, worry etched across her face. Emma, what's going on? You've been out there for 20 minutes. I pushed past her into the apartment, my voice shaking with anger. Don't act like you don't know. The development project, Lily. The one you and Sophie invested in to tear down my house, my neighborhood. Her face paled, and she closed the door slowly. How did you find out? Does it matter? I snapped, pacing the small living room. You're both lying to me, plotting behind my back to ruin my dream. Lily stepped closer, her hands raised to calm me. Emma, we were trying to protect you. This neighborhood's dying. Development's inevitable. We wanted to make sure you didn't sink your savings into a house that'll be worthless in 2 years. So you decided to profit from it, I said, my voice rising, bitter. Without telling me. When was the right time to mention you're destroying my home? She slumped onto the couch, her eyes pleading. It's complicated. I invested because Sophie convinced me it was the only way to secure something for you. The profits would have bought you a better house in a better neighborhood. That wasn't your decision, I said, my words raw, spilling from a place of hurt. It's my life, my choice, my dream. I trusted you, Lily. You and Sophie treated me like a child who can't decide for herself. We were trying to help, she said, her voice breaking. I didn't know about the emails, Emma. I swear. Sophie handled that. Helping by lying? I laughed, the sound hollow. By manipulating me? That's not help. That's control. Lily stood, reaching for me, but I stepped back. Please listen. No, I said, turning to the door. I've heard enough. Her voice followed me, desperate. What are you going to do? I paused, my hand on the knob, a cold resolve settling in. What I should have done from the start. Fight for what's mine. My phone rang as I stepped into the hallway. Sophie's name flashed on the screen. I answered, my voice steady. We need to talk, she said, no pleasantries. I know you've been digging. Tomorrow, at the house. Noon. Fine, I said. The whole truth. I hung up, the Portland rain greeting me as I left the building. Lily's betrayal, Sophie's lease they'd torn through me, but I wasn't broken. Not yet. Tomorrow, I'd face Sophie, and I'd be ready. I arrived at the Elm Street house 30 minutes early, the blue door staring back at me under Portland's gray sky. My bag held a stack of documents, emails Chloe restored, ownership records from the county clerk, zoning applications tied to David Larson's development company. The truth was clear. Sophie had orchestrated a meticulous plan to demolish my dream for profit. My hands steadied as I parked across the street, but my heart raced. This wasn't the Emma who avoided conflict. This was someone new, ready to fight. The house smelled of fresh paint and new carpet, renovations already underway. Sophie opened the door before I could knock, her blonde hair loose, her eyes wary. You came, she said, stepping aside. Didn't have a choice, I said, clutching my documents. We stood awkwardly in the entryway, 15 years of friendship suddenly fragile. The living room was empty, save for 2 folding chairs facing each other. I nodded toward them. Expecting a battle? Hoping for a conversation, she said, her voice soft. She sat, placing a portfolio between us. I'm sorry, Emma. Not for buying the house, I still think it was right, but for lying. Why? The word carried every question. Why lie? Why betray me? Why this house? Sophie sighed, her gaze steady. A year ago, David Larson approached me about a development project. This neighborhood was prime real estate. Profits would be huge. When you mentioned Elm Street, I panicked. We needed this house to secure the block. You bought it out from under me, I said, my voice sharp. You spied on my emails, Sophie. She flinched. That was David's idea. I should have said no, but I didn't. The foundation issues are real, but yes, we plan to demolish anyway. I stood, unable to stay still. Do you know what it's like? Finding out the people you trust most are manipulating you? I spent 8 years saving for this, missing funerals, weddings, all for this house. And you'll profit while I lose everything. You're right, she said, standing, her voice breaking. I thought I was protecting you, but I controlled you, like my mom did. I became what I swore I'd never be. Her admission hit hard, but before I could respond, the front door opened. Lily's voice echoed. Emma, Sophie, we need to talk. She stepped in, her face grim, followed by David Larson, his silver hair gleaming, flanked by 2 men with a briefcase. David, Sophie whispered, paling. The demolition permit? Approved, David said, his smile thin. Work starts tomorrow, 8 a.m. There's a problem, I said, stepping forward. This house is protected by a 1923 historical covenant. It can't be demolished. David's smile didn't waver. That was nullified years ago. Paperwork's handled. Nullified how? Lily challenged. A covenant needs historical society approval. There's no record. David's eyes narrowed. Technicalities don't matter. The project moves forward. Then we'll file an emergency injunction, I said, locking eyes with him. Sophie transferred 20% of her shares to me. I'm an investor now. David's calm cracked. What did you do? He snapped at Sophie. She stood beside me. I filed the paperwork yesterday. Sue me, but the demolition stops. David sized us up, then turned to an associate. Call Judge Wilson. We need to talk about Elm Street. My stomach dropped. A judge in his pocket. But Lily held up her phone, her voice steady. I'm on with Diane from the Portland Tribune. She's curious about a demolition permit for a historic property. David's face darkened. You're bluffing. Lily switched to speaker. Diane, you there? A woman's voice answered. Recording, Mr. Larson. Tell me about this covenant. Silence gripped the room. David stared at Lily, then me, then Sophie. This isn't over, he said, his voice low. You don't know who you're dealing with. I do, I said, pointing at Lily's phone. A developer who forges documents, bribes officials, bullies to get his way. We don't need to prove it. We just need to ask enough questions. No, Sophie said, her voice soft but firm. The mistake was thinking we could build something valuable by destroying what matters. She faced David. You used me, like I used Emma. We were both wrong. David's jaw clenched. Have your victory today. People like me always win. He stormed out, his associates scrambling after him, the door slamming shut. My knees buckled, but Lily grabbed my arm. You okay? I nodded, though I wasn't sure. We won this round, she said. But it's not over. Sophie picked up her portfolio, hesitating. I'll submit the covenant to the Historical Society, request the emergency order. If you'll let me help. I looked at her, anger still burning, but something else stirred clarity. Strength. We'll see, I said, moving to the window, the blue door across the street a distant memory. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about something bigger. The community center in downtown Portland buzzed with voices, chairs scraping as neighbors settled in. I stood at the front, my hands steady despite the weight of the moment. 3 days ago, we'd secured an emergency order to halt the demolition of Elm Street's historic homes. But it was temporary. David Larson and his development company would push back, their connections deep and relentless. I scanned the crowd, retirees, young families, activists each face a piece of this neighborhood story. Ava Thompson sat in the front row, nodding encouragement. Beside her was Rachel Moore, my old English professor, who'd rallied her network of historians and organizers. Lily leaned against the back wall, arms crossed, watching the crowd's reaction. Sophie was absent, her absence louder than words. I took a deep breath, my voice clear, deliberate. We called this meeting to discuss our neighborhood's future. Whispers rippled through the room. Everyone knew David's reputation, his influence. What you don't know, I continued, is that we have options. I outlined the plan, a community land trust to buy properties from willing sellers at fair market value, preserving Elm Street's historic charm while allowing thoughtful renovations. The 1923 covenant is our legal shield, I said, holding up the faded document. But our strength is community ownership. This isn't just about stopping a developer. It's about controlling our future. Questions came fast. How will it be funded? A man in a flannel shirt asked. Who'll manage the trust? Called a woman with a toddler on her lap. What about homeowners who want to sell? I answered each, drawing on research Rachel and I had done, legal frameworks Lily helped shape. Grants, donations, and crowdfunding for startup costs, I said. A board of residents will oversee the trust. Sellers get fair prices, and the trust ensures no demolition. With every answer, my confidence grew. This wasn't just about a house. It was about belonging, about a voice that mattered. The crowd leaned in, hope flickering in their eyes. A local attorney offered pro bono work. A retired architect volunteered to appraise properties. A group of tech-savvy 20-somethings pledged a website and social media campaign. Rachel squeezed my arm as the room emptied. You were incredible, Emma, she said, her gray eyes warm. I'm proud of you. I couldn't have done it without you, I said, then glanced at Lily, who'd joined us. Any of you. Lily smiled, soft but knowing. This was always in you, Emma. You just needed to find it. Before I could reply, the door swung open and Sophie stepped in. The room fell silent, all eyes on her. She looked different, less polished, more human. Her blonde hair was in a simple ponytail, her usual designer clothes swapped for jeans and a sweater. Sorry I'm late, she said, walking toward me, an envelope in her hand. I had some things to take care of. I met her halfway, my heart guarded. I didn't think you'd come. Almost didn't, she admitted, handing me the envelope. But you need to see this. I opened it, my breath catching. A legal document transferring ownership of the Elm Street house to me, my name bold at the top. I don't understand, I said, looking up. It's yours, Sophie said, her voice steady. Unconditional. I've signed it over. The foundation repairs are underway. Her smile was small, an apology woven into it. The room was empty now, just us, with Rachel and Lily watching from a distance. Why? I asked, the word heavy with a week's worth of pain. Because you were right, she said, her calm cracking. I told myself I was protecting you, but I controlled you, like my mom did. I became the person I swore I'd never be. She paused, her eyes glistening. We both had moms who thought they knew best, made choices for us. I promised I'd never do that, and I failed you. The truth settled in, sharp and familiar. Sophie's controlling mother, my distant one we'd bonded over escaping those shadows, only to repeat them. The house is just a house, Emma, she continued. What matters is your choice. Renovate it, sell it, give it to the trust. Whatever you decide, David will find another project. Her old confidence flickered. I've pulled my investment and sent documents to the county about his shady permits. I stared at the papers, emotions swirling. This was what I'd fought for me home, my choice. But it felt different now, heavier. I don't know if I can forgive you, I said, honest, raw. Sophie nodded, her eyes soft. I'm not asking for that. Just a chance to earn your trust someday. I held her gaze, then extended a hand. The neighborhood meeting next week, I said. We could use your financial expertise, if you're interested. A cautious smile broke through. I'll be there, she said, then turned to leave, her steps light but hesitant. Lily joined me at the window, her reflection beside mine in the glass. You okay? She asked, her voice gentle. I touched the documents, their weight grounding me. I own a house with a cracked foundation, I said, half laughing. But not all cracks are fatal. She grinned. You know a guy for that. Honest work, fair prices. Outside, the sun dipped below the Portland skyline, casting Elm Street's houses in a golden glow. Each one held a story, a fight, a dream. I folded the paperwork and slipped it into my bag. Tomorrow, I'd submit the trust documents, plan repairs, map out a future. But tonight, I stood still, breathing deeply, feeling the weight of ownership not just of a house, but of my choices, my strength. The meeting had ended, but the real work was beginning. Rachel approached, her presence steady. You've built something here, she said. Not just a trust, but a community. I nodded, my throat tight. It's more than I expected, I admitted. More than a house. She smiled, squeezing my shoulder. Houses become homes when you fight for them, Emma. Not against others, but against the parts of yourself that settle for less. Her words sank in, a truth I hadn't seen until now. I'd spent years chasing a blue door, but what I'd found was bigger, a voice, a purpose, a place where I belonged. The neighborhood stretched out before me, its history alive in every brick, every tree. The trust would protect it, but I'd protect something else, the Emma who'd learned to stand tall, to speak, to choose. As I left the center, the Portland air was crisp, carrying the scent of rain and possibility. My phone buzzed, a text from Ava, offering design ideas for the house. Another from the architect, scheduling appraisals. The community was moving, and I was part of it, not just a bystander. I glanced back at the center, its lights warm against the dusk. This was home, not because of a deed, but because I'd fought for it, for me. Some foundations need more than concrete to hold. Some houses only become homes when you rebuild yourself first. I walked to my car, the documents in my bag, a promise, not a burden. The path ahead was mine, and for the first time in years, I was ready to walk it.